Hey everyone, welcome to We're In Between, a podcast that watches and discusses one episode of As Told by Ginger in order a week.
I'm Ashley.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Patricia.
And yeah, last time we told you who we were, but in case you need a refresher, Ashley and I are from the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast, and Patricia?
I am from Old School Lane, both from the blog and from the YouTube channel.
And this is our second episode of the show. We are very excited. We had a great time last week, and hopefully you guys are still sticking with us. We have opened up a forum. Check that out on our Twitter pages. We'll have a link to that. And thanks as always for listening, and we're in between.
Someone once told me the grass is much greener.
I still need to watch all of this show in order.
There is a mixture of sadness, but at the same time there's a mixture of a little bit of humor, which you can definitely expect in this series.
Every character has multiple dimensions, really.
Obviously it's a scripted show, but they don't feel scripted. They feel real. They feel genuine.
If kids find value in things, I think there is value in them. Because it is art in its own way, and it is very important.
Whatever it is, just own it. Love what you do and do what you love.
If it's cool to you, then, who cares about what the others say?
Someone once told me the grass is much greener on the other side.
Alright, this week we'll be discussing the second episode of the show, called Carl and Maude. And in this one, continuing from last time, we see that Ginger has to do some community service work, so she ends up going to an elderly home where Carl ends up being there as well, meeting an elderly prankster by the name of Maude, which is a fascinating woman to say the least. And we also have Courtney inviting herself to Ginger's house for dinner, which has Ginger all sorts of concerned. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the greatest things about this show is its continuity. Immediately from the second episode, when it starts, they're heading over to the nursing home for community service because they were arrested for Ginger stealing the enter sign from the bank. And that was a follow-up to the previous episode.
I love the continuity as well, in multiple ways, because as we'll see, not in this episode, but later on, the eyeball comes back, and there are lots of little through lines that come up again and again throughout the show.
Right before the time of As Told by Ginger and a few occasional animated shows, there wasn't a lot of continuity with every single episode. Every single episode was standalone, it was episodic, so you can just watch any episode of any cartoon and you would be perfectly fine with it. You won't have to worry about character progression or storylines. As Told by Ginger was like one of the first that really took the notion of, why don't we continue where the last episode left off and build up upon it? And that's a great thing because, it could have been just like any other, cartoon that aired at the time in which it was just like, this happened? Well, okay, we'll just fix it in some way. Like when Carl gets his petrified eyeball stolen, he could have probably gotten it back when Blake was climbing up to the treehouse, or Ginger was getting arrested. Maybe she could have, said something and trying to get herself out of it, and everything would have been back to normal. But no, one of the good things about it is that it keeps everything. It'll continue to stay that way throughout the series, and it builds up upon it.
Yeah, I love that as well. The way that it has continuation, and I do want to give it some credit for not being so much of a continuation that you can't watch the episodes out of order to an extent. Each episode is still can stand alone, and you could still watch them, and it's still, you understand it. But definitely, I'm thinking, and part of the reason we wanted to watch it all so much is because of the continuation, to really understand the whole story as an arc.
Absolutely. So getting into the plot of this episode, we start, as we mentioned, with Ginger doing her community service time. She's bringing Carl around like a dog, which you don't see him at first. It looks like he might just be an actual dog, like she's walking a dog for her service, but turns out it's Carl just being weird, and Ginger has to watch him. She goes to this nursing home where Carl meets an elderly woman named Maude, who is basically Ashley in retirement, let's be honest.
I think I would be a little bit more sane, perhaps.
Well, we'll check back in 60 years.
60 years, guys, we'll be doing some kind of a Nicktoons podcast still.
Yeah, we'll be looking back fondly on Pig Goat Banana Cricket or Fanboy and Chop Chop.
Patricia, I was gonna say Pig Goat Banana Cricket specifically. That's so funny. But yeah, it's actually really endearing how quickly Carl takes to Maude. I just called him Claude, which might be their couple name.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a fanfic online that ships them so hard.
God. But it's cute because they're both just big ol' weirdos.
Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable, their relationship. It gets a little bit strange at moments, but at the beginning it's definitely very endearing. We see that she's this kind of a prankster woman. She has a glove, like a medical glove, filled with water that she's trying to drop on her insurance man or something along the lines of, and she's just immediately, you can tell he's enamored by her. That's what he wants to be when he's an old man, is still up to all the crazy antics, and it's like I said, it gets a little uncomfortable towards the end, but at the beginning it's definitely a fun relationship, them just kind of being ridiculous and being, crazy together.
Yeah, and one of the weird moments in this episode is when Maude wants to get a drink, she takes out her dentures and she puts it into a glass and she pours cherry soda. She takes out her dentures and she hands the drink over to Carl. She's like, "You're not grossed out by it, are you?" And then he says, "Maude, gross is my middle name. First name's Carl." And then Maude just smiles and said, "I think this will be the start of a beautiful friendship." So, yeah, it's like they're made for each other.
Yeah, they're really, it's really sweet and kind of creepy. There's this great quote where, because the lady at the front desk warned them all about Maude, and Carl immediately wants to meet her, obviously, and he says, "Your reputation precedes you." And Maude says, "Reputation as what? A live wire?" And then she opens the window and yells, "They ain't lying!" Oh, I love it.
Yeah, she definitely has an energy that I would be okay with having in my old age.
Later in the episode, we get to see Ginger's experience of doing her community service. We see her at the bingo hall, and she's calling out numbers. And then there's this old woman who comes in with an electrical scooter, and she's like knocking Ginger's table, and she grabs her prize, which is a wax fruit basket, and she starts eating the wax fruit. And Ginger's saying like, "No, it's for decoration." And the lady saying, "I want to do whatever I want. Leave me alone." When the community service thing is over, Carl is enamored by Maude, and he even wants to introduce her to Hoodsie, and Hoodsy's not really interested or excited about meeting up with Maude.
Yeah, we sort of immediately get a tinge of jealousy, which grows over time, but he kind of sees Maude as being immature, which I think is a little bit hypocritical. I feel like they have plenty of immature moments of their own, but you can tell he wants to just spend time with Carl, right? He doesn't want Carl to be spending all of his time with Maude, and I feel like in a strange way that's a common dynamic, right, of people spending too much time with their significant others, and it takes up more of their lives, and you feel like you're losing your friend and all that, and it's a bit of an interesting situation because she's an elderly woman, but the concept is the same.
We, of course, can't go very long without Courtney getting involved in an episode of As Told by Ginger. I actually didn't realize how involved Courtney is in the show. I knew she was a character, but at least in these first couple episodes, she's like a major role in all of it.
Yeah, and the reason why Courtney's in this episode is because Courtney was so enamored with Ginger being arrested for trying to rob a bank that she wants to get to know Ginger more, so she invites herself for dinner. One of the things that I really do love when after Courtney is done talking to Ginger, she was talking to Blake, who's sitting there with the remote control moving the TV and stereo up and down. And she says, like, you remember what Mama always says, even if you're friends with a person, you have to be able to manipulate them and let them have, try to see if you can get it your way. And then she just smiles and says, "Won't you be a dear and grab me my book bag?" And then he just he has this great face. And then he just walks over to get her book bag.
That's a great scene. And what I noted there is that all of the kids are performing adulthood in this show. They're all either trying to be like their parents or just try to act like they're already adults and they're already independent, and none of them are.
I think that's pretty common of middle schoolers as well, because you want to be cool, you want to be grown up. I feel like that's when, like, a lot of girls start wearing makeup and stuff, so you start feeling like, oh, I'm so old, I'm so mature, like, this is such a adult whatever, which, whether or not you're mature in middle school is pretty debatable.
So we have Hoodsy meeting up with Maude for the first time, and he is not interested. He's saying, like, I want to go. I don't even spend this much time with my grandma. Then we see the plan that they want to do, which is having Maude win a game of Crazy Eights. And Carl is basically leading Maude into winning and saying, like, if she changes her deck, to a heart because nobody else will have it, then she'll win the game. And when she puts it down, they just all flat out and leave, and she just wins and laughs, and Carl just laughs, and Hoodsy is just not caring about this.
Yeah, Hoodsy's upset. He seems almost, like, morally upset. He's like, you guys are cheaters, and he just leaves, and, it's just that situation of when there's somebody who's in one of your friends' lives that you don't get along with, and you just don't want to be a part of it. Definitely relatable, definitely not an exact situation I've ever been in, but you feel the dynamic for sure. Then we lead over to Dodie and Macy are helping Ginger get ready for the dinner, or at least helping her get her house ready, and they're trying to, like, hide embarrassing things and trying to make it all seem like, good enough for Courtney, because Courtney's just, she's like the queen of the school. And there's this picture of Ginger, like, sitting on the toilet that's, like, on top of their, like, right above their fireplace. And, like, to be honest, I feel like that would be something that I probably wouldn't want to be around either.
Yeah, it is pretty embarrassing. And at the same time, we see Courtney, and Miranda is coaching Courtney on what this is going to be like. And Courtney says, help me pick out my outfit. I want a look that says, I don't want to look like I'm better than you, but I am. I love that. So self-aware.
Yeah, and another thing that was even brought up by both Ginger, Dodie, and Macy, and with Miranda was that, Ginger has toy ponies in her room. And I just kind of find that hilarious looking back on it now because, we're in a day and age where My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is a big phenomenon, and now she wants to either hide it or, showcase it to her room because she's embarrassed by it. And also, I just find it hilarious that, they're organizing the house and they're making sure that everything's nice. You have, obviously the picture of Ginger sitting on the potty, and then there's the apple brown Betty stain. And one of the things I really do like is when Ginger turns off the lights, there's a disco ball on her ceiling, and when she turns it off, there's, like, lights flashing on it.
I definitely think that was one of the things, it was kind of cool to have a disco ball in your room as a kid. So she does have, some kind of things going on for her, at least.
One thing this show gets right all the time is the A and the B plot intersecting beautifully. Rugrats does it well, too. And in this episode, it's great because Courtney and Maude both end up coming over, and it's just a total comedy of errors.
It is, like, one of the most disastrous meetings ever. And then Ginger, when she finds out that the guest that Carl has invited over for dinner is not a sweet little girl who has an early curfew, but is an old woman who is, like, crazy, and she coughs a lot, and then immediately Courtney is over, and then Ginger just sags and says, this is my life.
Yeah, you feel for her. And to be honest, with all of Carl's antics, I can see being a little bit like, wow, this would happen to me. This is how things are gonna go, and it's you feel the discomfort, but, Courtney is weirdly, she deals with it pretty well, again, because of her fascination. She, like, has a camera, she's taking pictures of this. This is, like, a tourist event for her, and she asks, like, oh, can I have a walking tour of your house? Which, like, in my life, none of my friends have ever asked for a walking tour of my house. It's very Courtney, a very Courtney thing to do.
Yeah, and then we have Maude and Carl sitting together, and Lois, they're just talking how they were enamored with one another. And then one of my favorite double entendre jokes was when Maude talks to Lois and say, so Lois, ever think about grandchildren? And you're thinking about, oh no! And then Lois just, like, runs away, and then the joke ends up with, because I want to show you a picture of mine. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, Maude just doesn't hold back, obviously, the entire dinner. And there's also a running joke or line in the show where they say, I've got to see a man about blank. In this one, Lois says, I've got to see a man about some mushrooms, excuse me, when she goes to check on the mushrooms in the oven. I think, is that right, Patricia?
It is. It's pretty reoccurring, yeah.
Yeah, so we are at the dinner table. They also decided to tell Courtney that Maude is their grandmother, right, for dealing with things. Maude's just going crazy. She just starts, like, digging into the food. It's like a brisket, and she takes, like, massive quantities of this. She's, like, inhaling this food. I don't know what's up with this woman. But Carl, of course, is just even more enamored with her than ever because she can eat so much food, and apparently that's, I mean, in Carl's world, a positive trait.
Yeah, obviously. And Courtney claims when she sees Lois that she's just like the moms on TV. And she totally sees them as a TV show, like sitcom family. And she thinks they're all faking it, too. She thinks that they're all just sort of performing their roles like they do in her family. But the Foutleys are far more genuine. They're weird, but they're genuine.
And then we have the scene in which when Hoodsie comes over to the house and he wants to talk to Carl, he tells him about how he doesn't still feel right about, him and Maude together. And then Carl approaches him and says, like, don't worry, Hoodsie. Nobody's going to take your place. You're my best friend, but Maude is my woman. And he then gives him a box and says, is this for me? And he's like, no, but open it and check it out. And it's a ringworm. It's like a worm shaped like a ring.
And then this episode takes a really dark turn.
Out of nowhere, too. I didn't think it was real at first.
I thought for sure it was going to go a different direction.
Carl comes back in, right, or I don't even know if he does, but we flip back to them all at the kitchen table. We do get a joke by Lois where she's like, oh, she's on their father's side, really, because she's just being really uncomfortable. She's asking Courtney to chew her food for her, and like moments later, she just like falls face down onto the table, and she is dead. Genuinely.
Oh, yes, she's...
Like, I thought maybe she just passed out or something. No, like, that really happened. Stunning.
Carl gives the eulogy. She donates her gallbladder to Carl. It's all very dark, and Carl's really shaken up about it.
Yeah, and then the episode ends with Hoodsie saying, yeah, you wanted to go drop some water balloons up on the roof, and then he smiles and says, I think Maude would have liked that.
Oh, poor Maude.
Yeah. So I know that there's no fun fact segment on this podcast, but I actually do want to give one really quickly. So this episode is based off of a 1971 movie called Harold and Maude, in which a young man who's obsessed with suicide and death falls in love with an older woman who's enthusiastic. She looks at life positively. She loves life, and he starts falling in love with her, and they have this wonderful relationship together.
Interesting. I see the parallels.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of differences. Like, for example, Maude in the movie is sweet, she's kind, and Harold is a kid who's depressed, and he drives a hearse, and he just thinks of unique ways of dying, and his mom and his uncle just don't even care about him. Like, he's a rich kid who's just absolutely bored, and his mom is trying to give him some purpose, but he's just not interested, and his uncle is a drill sergeant, and when he meets up with Maude for the first time, they just have this wonderful relationship, and also in the movie, Maude passes away too, but it's a more sadder note. But in the end of the movie, Harold is more enthusiastic about life, and he doesn't care about he doesn't care about death or suicide anymore. And it's a really nice movie. If any of you guys are interested in checking it out, I would recommend that you do. It's a really nice movie.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Patricia. And this is our second episode. It's, we got to do our yay or nay. I give this one a yay as well. I hope I don't end up just giving them all.
No, I think that there's going to be a few episodes in season 1 that you'll give some nays. So, yeah, I want to give this one a yay as well.
Yeah, I will join the yay crowd.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. And next week we'll have episode 3.